to my sewing room. We have such an exciting show for you today. So many interesting things to do with your wonderful sewing machines and lots of different techniques. The first project I'd like to share with you, it looks like an antique tapestry pillow, doesn't it? Well, it isn't. It is a machine cross-stitch pillow that actually just had to be put under the machine 2 times. More wonderful hemstitch work with a wing needle is done on this beautiful little child's dress. Let me hold the collar up here. The little bow, the flip-flop bow, has a beautiful hemstitch that goes all the way around it, and hemstitching is found on the scallops on the bottom of this pinafore. How about a little matching doll dress? Is this wonderful? And then not only do we have the top made like the child's dress, there is an absolutely delicate little tiny machine embroidery on the bottom with hemstitching or wing needle entredeaux and double needle pin tucks. All so easy to do on your sewing machine. This is a fabulous ladies' vest with ribbon weaving on one side and absolutely magnificent machine embroidery and couching and hemstitching and all kinds of elegant work on the other side. You know, cut work has long been one of my favorite forms of needlework, period. From the Victorian era around the turn of the last century, well, actually the 1900s, this is a magnificent machine cut work. And my very favorite part of this blouse is the wing needle entredeaux or the hemstitching, which has gone down and looped and gone back. Now, these were all made by my very dear friend, Peggy Dilbone, who will be my guest in a few minutes. One of the things that Peggy is very famous for is her hem-stitch plackets in the back of a lady's blouse. Do you see how easy it is to make that placket with the wing needle hem stitch? This is another one of Peggy's beautiful camisoles that also has wing needle work, double needle pin tucks, and a beautiful piece of cut work, all done by machine. You know, hem stitching down the plackets, absolutely beautiful. This is wing needle hem stitching, wing needle hem stitching down the front of this lady's nightgown or robe, whichever one you would like to use it. Isn't that a pretty technique? Now, the lady's blouse has a wonderful sampler of heirloom sewing on the front with machine embroidery, but let me share with you the back. Guess what? Here is a placket with wing needle work just simply stitched down and around, making this such an easy blouse to finish. Won't you come on over to the technique boards with me? I absolutely love this day gown. It is so tailored and just perfect for the young man in your family. The technique we're going to talk about is wing needle plackets, developed by Peggy Dilbone. The placket comes around the back of the beautiful day gown, on the top and the over placket, comes all the way down the front, and let me open it up so you can see how beautiful this is. Hem stitching, hem stitching, hem stitching, hem stitching. Now, let's talk about this just a little bit. This, first of all, you're going to trace the neckline of your day gown, and then we're going to come in and trace off how wide you want your placket to be, because this day gown pattern did not have a placket pattern. Then we're going to stitch it solid, those little trace lines, and then to get your pattern, cut it away. So here is the pattern for your placket. Next, you're going to cut the day gown plus the placket out of your fabric. Put the placket on, after you join your shoulder seams, put the placket underneath the day gown. Then comes the fun part, wing needle hem stitching. This is a triple honeycomb stitch. Wing needle hem stitching all the way down the bottom of the day gown, right around the very edge, not all the way over to the edge, but close to the edge, and then you will come in and trim away the excess, because you can't really run that hem stitching right on the very edge. So bring your hem stitching up and then trim it away, and that is that wonderful technique for the hem stitched plackets. Now, the other technique that Peggy has developed, I told you about, is on this beautiful little day gown. See the little tucks that come across the French day gown, and some pretty, pretty old feather stitching and a little machine embroidery. This is a very interesting technique here on the sleeves. I'm going to untie this so you can see just how pretty it is that it's pulled up. There's a little baby daisy entredeaux that has been stitched here. Then Peggy has taken the silk ribbon and run it up and over on that baby daisy wing needle entredeaux, and she's also used the wing needle entredeaux to attach the gathered lace. Now the next technique that Peggy has developed is really interesting and so easy. It is a wing needle or a hem stitch placket. Very easy to do, so much fun because it is no trouble. And here is all the trick there is to making that placket. First of all, cut a bias piece of fabric to go behind your hem stitching. Just to hem stitch on one layer of fabric is not enough. So we have the bias piece behind the hem stitch that's going to be a placket. We're going to come in and hem stitch down, turn around, hem stitch back up, and then I'm going to simply slit right down that middle. Now I don't really want that big piece of bias stuck back there, so as soon as I hem stitch down and back, slit down the middle, then I will come back behind and trim away the excess of the bias piece. I'm so pleased to have as my guest today Peggy Dilbone. Peggy is a Husqvarna Viking educator. And Peggy, I just want to welcome you to the show.
Thank you, Martha. I'm just so glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Show me all those wonderful things in real person that I've just shared with our viewers.
In real person. Well, what's so fun about this, Martha, we always talk about wanting to do things so easy. So this is very, very easy. And as Martha showed you at the boards, we start out with the technique of putting the facing behind. I want to hem stitch through 2 layers of fabric because it's more sturdy, and the placket needs to be a little sturdier also. And all I've done is hem stitched with a wing needle and then trimmed away the excess fabric so that I have this beautiful edge. Now for this particular garment, because it is a little child's garment, a baby garment, I did change the size of my entredeaux to make it more delicate. I used the triple entredeaux stitch, but I wanted it more delicate than what it comes up. So basically I just am using the edge of my presser foot as my guideline, and I've set the stitch, and I'm just stitching. Oops, I had my stop button on, so it just did one pattern and stop. But basically we're just stitching along the edge of the fabric to create that beautiful entredeaux stitch or hem stitching. And you could use the entredeaux stitch if you'd like to do this, rather than the triple entredeaux.
The triple honeycomb.
Exactly. And when I've done the one side, then I went back and did the other side, went around the other side and trimmed away. And that's basically all that you have to do for that.
Well, Peggy, that is just so easy, but yet it's a really nice trick.
Right.
And it makes such a beautifully finished
Isn't it
edge.
fun?
Peggy, thank you so much for being
welcome.
here. And now Peggy has a wonderful trick for you, sewing for baby. This is the sweetest little baby girl day gown. And the placket, the hem stitch placket that runs the stitching on the inside and outside. And Peggy, I just love the way you put those teeny little embroideries in there too. And now then, this is what I really want you to show everybody. You know, we've been teaching together for a long time, and we've always called this baby daisy entredeaux, and everybody just loves it, and I just love the way you've used it on the sleeve. Now show us how to do that.
Oh, Martha, thank you. I think you named this aptly, baby daisy entredeaux. I think it's your specialty. But it's basically just a really pretty little decorative stitch that looks like a daisy, and we stitched it with a wing needle, so put a hole in the center that allows us to run the ribbon. And I used a soft silk ribbon. And this is a great way just to do a casing for a sleeve that makes it very delicate for a little baby, because you don't want to pull up anything very tight. So it's just stitched, and then we ran the ribbon through,
Did you
and
use
you
a tapestry
pull it up.
needle
I
or
used
some
a
kind
tapestry needle to
just
do that.
real blunt on the end.
And this is a stitch that it looks like a little block, but you can run ribbon through there. It looks like beading that we run ribbon through, and it's just another one that we stitched with the wing needle. But you just simply stitch with your wing needle. The wing needle puts a hole in the fabric, and that's what allows us to run the ribbon through, because that stitch basically was designed not for a wing needlework, but
Well,
by
we
doing it
figured
this
out
way,
how
we
to-
figured out how to do it. So I know you always talk about this looks like sewing lace down with lace when you talk about Baby Daisy.
It's just such a wonderful lace. And I notice you're using a stabilizer underneath it.
Yes, whenever I use the wing needle, I use stabilizer just because the stitch is heavy on the fine, delicate fabrics, and it's just stitched very nicely.
I absolutely think
Isn't
that
that
is so
the
sweet, the
sweetest?
white on the pale, pale pink. And I also love it, Peggy, the way you've used the dark pink over there so we could really
Yeah,
see
you
that.
can change the color ribbon. This one was done in ecru, so you could do it
You know,
in an
Peggy, one of the
outstanding
most
color.
wonderful things about teaching heirloom sewing is enjoying all these fabulous stitches on the sewing machine and inventing ways to put a wing needle in that wasn't supposed to be. We've had a lot of fun doing that.
I love hem stitching and doing wing needlework.
I do
It's my
too,
very
Peggy.
favorite.
Oh, I know it. Peggy, thank you so much for being here. You're just wonderful, and it's always good to see you.
Martha, thank you for having me.
And next, I have a beautiful quilt square for you. As you probably have already found out, I love hearts. And we have enjoyed so much this heart quilt that we have made for you, and I hope you're enjoying it also. We've used a lot of cross stitch on this quilt, and the center motif here has cross stitch. And by the way, the colors are wonderful, 2 shades of robin's egg blue and several shades of pink, but there is a cross stitch motif in the middle of this Madeira. And of course, there are cross stitch motifs around each one of these squares also. Now, this ecru heart, this is a Madeira, a magic Madeira, the kind done with wash-away basting thread. And you might say, well, Martha, what is magic Madeira and what is wash-away basting thread? Well, I'm going to share with you exactly how you do this technique for magic. And by the way, that's another word for EASY, easy Madeira. I'm going to use 2 layers of fabric here. It just seems to be as easy as doing it with wash-away stabilizer. So I'm just going to use a fabric to stabilize my heart. Okay, here is, I'm going to trace off the heart and I put another layer of fabric behind it. Okay, that's step number 1. Then I'm going to use regular thread in my machine and wash-away basting thread in my bobbin, or vice versa. I think it's easier to put the wash-away basting thread in the bobbin. Now, after you roll your wash-away basting thread on your bobbin, please be careful with it. Please label it with a magic marker or something that this is wash-away basting thread, or you will have so much fun when you make your next dress and you put it together and part of it is wash-away basting thread. That is not a good idea. But here we're going to use it for our magic Madeira. Okay, I'm going to stitch around the heart, all the way around the heart with my regular thread in the top and wash-away basting thread in the bobbin. Then I will simply come in and trim all of the excess fabric. Now, there's not a whole lot to this little trick I'm going to show you, but I've got to cut a little slice. So all the work you have to do to cut a slice is to pull these 2 layers of fabric apart and cut a little hole in the top piece, and then I will extend that hole just a little bit like this so I can turn it right side out after I cut the hole. Now, I've already cut the hole here and turned it right side out. Now, the real trick to this magic Madeira is to spray starch, spray this whole thing until it's completely wet all along this outside edge. And when I say wet, I mean completely wet. As soon as it is completely soaked, now remember I've turned this heart right side out. As soon as it is completely soaked, I take a dry iron, now not a steam iron, completely dry iron, and I iron, and I iron, and I iron until the spray starch is completely dry. You cannot have it be wet, not even one little drop of wetness. It has to be completely dry. So you iron with a dry iron, and it sometimes takes a little while to do it, and you iron until it is completely dry. Now, what did that spray starch wetting and the dry ironing do? Well, wetting your heart with spray starch meant you wet the wash-away basting thread. Drying it with the iron means the whole fabric got dry. And guess what the secret is now? Are you ready to watch? You're going to get your heart and you're going to open it a little bit down here at the bottom, and then you're going to go pop, 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 pop. Oh my goodness, it's working. And by the way, if it doesn't pop easily, I need you to go back and spray starch it some more and dry iron it. If it doesn't open easily, it means that you did not have enough spray starch and did not get it wet enough, or else did not get it dry enough. Okay, now let me just show you again. Let's pop. Look here, something very magic is appearing. Oh my goodness, you're going to love it. All of a sudden, after I pop one layer off. Now I'm going to throw this one away. That has a big hole in it. That's really not going to be too cute for Madeira. And by the way, I have already done my machine embroidery on here if I want to. See, I have a perfect heart ready to Madeira applique, a Madeira motif ready to applique down. So I'm going to take this heart and put it on my pink square, which is my pink pillow square. I'm going to line it up. And you know, I might even want to use a little KK2000 to hold it down, or else you can pin it a couple of places. And then I'm going to do the tiny little Madeira stitch all the way around it, Madeira applique stitch. And it kind of looks like a little bitty blanket stitch if you don't have a Madeira applique stitch. Or if you don't have a Madeira applique stitch, you can simply zigzag all the way around your heart. And here is what your magic Madeira motif looks like when you have finished it using the wash away basting thread method. Now you can tiny Madeira stitch around here, or you can just tiny zigzag around here. But what that wash away basting thread method does, it means that you have a perfectly folded back edge all the way around. You did not have to finger press it. You didn't have to be careful. You just simply stitched it, wet it, and turned it. It is absolutely magic to do Madeira applique with the wash away basting thread. And now I have a home decorating project just for you. Many of you that have been watching our show probably know by now that I love hearts. We have that wonderful heart quilt that we're doing during the show, and look at these ribbons. What better could be than hearts and ribbons combined? Bows like this that the decorators really use and charge a lot for, they really aren't that hard to make. You just have to kind of pull some pretty pieces together. This has an organza, a shiny organza twinkle cloth, like I call it, ribbon. It has a wonderful silk ribbon, and this printed ribbon is so pretty. You could make a pillow to go with any room in your house or in anyone's house you'd like to give a pretty gift. It really isn't that hard to make that twinkle organza. This one's done a little bit by hand. You roll the middle of the rows, and then you run by hand, by the way, gang. You know, I don't do much sewing by hand, but using a needle, I just put a running stitch along the edge of this ribbon, and then on the very edge, you veer it off to the side. Now watch what magically happens when I pull this running stitch on this beautiful organza ribbon. That is all you have to do, and kind of twirl a little center of the rose there. That's all you have to do to make this wonderful rose. And now then, after you get your pillow made, here are the other pieces. I have a bow that's done out of the stripe. I just have some straight pieces out of the organza. I'm going to tie together in a little bow my silk ribbon. I'm going to put them down next. Just kind of arrange it any way you want to. So those streamers will be there. I have this pretty bow that I'm going to put down as the base bow. And you know what's kind of fun to do, I think? Tie knots in your ribbons. On the little frou-frous that I always made for Joanna's dresses and the grandchildren's dresses, we simply went in and tied knots. This is fun to do. Let me come in here and tie this knot for you. Actually, I like tying knots. Okay, then you come in with your ribbon rosette and put that on the top, and that makes ever such a pretty ribbon that you're going to put on the top of your pillow. Now, one of the things I love, as I've talked a little bit earlier to you, is these fabulous notions that we have now. If you're going to KK2000 together, the two pieces of the heart to keep it from slipping, I think it's best to glue together, this is a temporary spray adhesive, to glue one side together and then spray your temporary spray adhesive on the other side. It makes it a little bit easier to do one side and then the other if you're actually having to match them. And then this is so easy to do. I'm just ready now to sew around this little heart. I'm ready just to straight stitch all the way around this heart, and then I'll turn it right side out and put a little polyfill stuffing in there. turn it right side out, and then I'll have the fun of taking that pretty ribbon that I just made, go a little bit further all the way around here, and I'll go all the way around that heart, and then I'll take this pretty ribbon that we've just put together, and I will place it on the heart after I stuff it, and then I will have this beautiful pillow that is really just one of those happy, happy pillows to go in a guest bedroom or to go in any kind of a bedroom. It would also be really pretty for a little girl's bedroom, I think. And now I would like to invite you to come along to my attic with me. I bet most of you have heard the statement, "There's nothing new under the sun." When Peggy showed you that wonderful hem-stitched placket a few minutes ago, I couldn't help but think about the antique pillow I was going to share with you. I bought these pillowcases, really not the pillow, a few weeks ago in Paris when I was on a trip, and these were purchased at the Paris flea market. It's made out of a wonderful silk fabric, but I want to show you something interesting. Right here in the corners of the flanges that go around this pillow is indeed a hem stitch which has been split. So it's a hem stitch finish, a hem stitch placket, very much like the ones Peggy has just shared with you on the backs of the day gowns. The hem stitching machine has been around since about 1857. So these pillows, which I believe are probably 1920-ish, have the flange is folded up and hem stitched all the way around, but I just could not wait to share with you these 80-year-old pillows that had that same treatment. I think to go over to this beautiful hand-cut work done in a darker pink, the pillows in a pink fabric, isn't this absolutely magnificent? The cut work that goes all the way around the bottom of the pillow, the flowers and the leaves, the cut work flowers and the eyelets and the cut work pieces, the Richelieu bars on the cut work. You know, to say there's nothing new under the sun, it may sound a little bit trite, but actually what we're doing today, which is so exciting, is doing things that are antique. We're doing them with our sewing machines, which makes it a whole lot easier and a whole lot faster. But I do have, as my husband says, an unnatural attraction for antique clothes and pillows and beautiful things from the turn of the last century. I have a really beautiful sewing from the heart I'd like to share with you today. Dear Martha, about 3 years ago, a dear friend asked if I would help her with a sewing project. I was happy to oblige. It was a simple project of making 1 yard single-layer flannel baby blankets to send to the Kwai River Christian Hospital in Thailand. Refugee women come to the hospital to have their babies and hear the word of the Lord. To date, we have sent more than 700 blankets to them just between the two of us. As we are a homeschooling family, we keep track on a world map of where in the world the blankets are made and sent. So the blankets that we make are sent. So far, babies in Thailand, Tanzania, Honduras, and the Philippines have benefited from this stewardship project. My children have also benefited from this project. They help me count and pack these blankets and have learned that there are babies who, if it weren't for these simple pieces of flannel, they would go home from the hospital wrapped in a towel or go home from the hospital wrapped in perhaps nothing. A simple yard of flannel serged around the edges to wrap up a beautiful new baby. Sewing for love can't get much easier than this. In God's love, Sarah Jane Cobernews Gibbs and Nancy L. Dahlberg, and they put a P.S. We live in Washington State. Sarah and Nancy, what a beautiful project, and I especially love the fact that you talked about how this project was teaching your children about loving those less fortunate and about spending your precious time and money doing things for those less fortunate. I can't think of a better thing to teach your children. Thank you so much, Sarah and Nancy, for writing this beautiful letter. And I'll see you out in Washington State as soon as I can get back. Thank you so much for joining me in my sewing room today. I have just loved having you as my guest, and I would certainly like to invite you back next time.